The Big Fix. In the smoky backrooms of 1950s Toronto, where the racetracks hum with whispers and the odds are chalked faster than you can blink, one name rules the bookmaking world: Manny the Hat Kaufmann. But when a longshot wins big and a rival bookie turns up dead, strangled jockey silks and a losing ticket stuffed in his mouth, Manny finds himself framed for a crime he didn't commit. Enter detectives Mick McCathie and MacNeely, two sharp-talking cops who know every back alley, every bank cop, and every trick in the book. As rumors swirl and crooked cops close in, the duo must navigate a tangled web of race-fixing, double-crosses, and a killer hiding in plain sight. Welcome back to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. I'm Jay Nickel of Nickel Investigations, and you're listening to another Whodunit Wednesday in a Mick and Mack mystery, where we step into the world of classic detective fiction. Go back to the golden era of detective fiction and enjoy stories in the tradition of the greats of writing. From Agatha Christie to Raymond Chandler to John Creasy, these are short stories I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1. At the Track. The crowd at Greenwood Park sounded like a brass band falling down the stairs. Cheers, groans, the rattle of losing tickets, and one guy yelling about his ulcer like it was in the fourth furlong. Mick adjusted his brown fedora against the afternoon sun and leaned on the rail, scanning the odds boards. That's 3 races in a row where the favorite folds like a cheap lawn chair, he muttered. Beside him, Mack stuffed a hot dog in his mouth and said around a mouthful of mustard, "Maybe the horses are unionizing." Or maybe, Mick said, narrowing his eyes at the tote board, someone's pulling strings. Race 4 was minutes from post. A chestnut longshot named Buttonhook had gone from 40 to 1 to 10 to 1 in under 10 minutes. The kind of movement that made seasoned gamblers blink. It made bookies sweat. They weren't here to play the ponies, not today. They were on assignment, not official, mind you. But when Manny the Hat Kaufmann calls in a favor, you answer, even if the favor smells like hay, sweat, and trouble. "I don't like it," Mick said. "I like the mustard," Mack replied, licking his fingers. "What don't you like?" The line shift. This isn't enthusiasm, this is choreography. The bell rang, the gates clanged open, 7 horses exploded out, hooves churning up dirt. Mick watched through his binoculars as Buttonhook, with a jockey he looked barely old enough to shave, moved clean and smooth along the rail. By the final turn, the favorite was boxed in, and Buttonhook, out of nowhere, surged ahead like he was running downhill. He won by a neck. Silence. Then the crowd erupted. Mick lowered his binoculars, and there it is. Mack frowned. "Guy behind me just won enough to retire in Florida. Wants to buy the jockey a fruit basket." "Get his name," Mick said. "Then tell him not to spend it all until we know what really happened." They found Manny in his usual seat at the Starlight Room, his private second-floor joint above a bowling alley on Dundas Street. It wasn't a speakeasy, just a place that pretended not to know what was going on behind the curtain with the brass railing and the green felt tables. Manny the Hat Kaufmann looked like someone who'd been born in a good suit. His fedora sat perfectly angled, his cigar barely smoked, his voice smooth enough to butter bread. "Gentlemen," he said as Mick and Mack slid into the leather booth across from him, "I take it you saw race 4. "We saw it gallop right into a book of fairy tales," Mack said. "I didn't touch it," Manny said, lighting his cigar. "Didn't take any action on that race. My instincts told me something stank, so I posted at the regular line and left it alone." "Any idea who did?" Mick asked. Manny exhaled a plume of smoke. "That's a thing. Word on the street is, I fixed it. And now punters are lining up to cash in with me like I made of gold leaf and horseshoes." Mick leaned back. "So you're being framed?" "Framed," Manny nodded, "like a Rembrandt." There was a pause. "Who's pushing the rumor?" Mack asked. Manny's eyes hardened. "Benny Marino. Calls himself Chalk these days. Flashy dresser, always grinning like he owns a track. He's been looking to make a move for months." "Chalks has always been a weasel," Mack said. But murder by misfortune? I'm telling you, man, he said, voice low now. This wasn't just a race, this was a message. There was a knock at the booth partition. A pale face poked in. Shnooky Levine, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big and a nervous expression 3 sizes too large. Manny, Shnooky hissed, "You got a minute?" Manny gave him a look. "Do I look like I got a minute?" Shnooky's eyes darted. "It's important, real important." "What is it, Shnooky?" Mick said gently. Shnooky glanced around and whispered, "I think I saw who did it." Manny sat up. Mick and Mack froze. "I ain't sure," Shnooky added, tugging at his collar. "All I know is someone with a silver pocket watch, real shiny. He was talking to someone in a black hat. Said something like, 'Number 4, like we said.' Then he saw me and I skedaddled." Mack looked at Mick. Mick looked at Manny. Manny's cigar paused halfway to his lips. "Well," Mack said, "looks like this just stopped being about horses." Chapter 2. The Hat Gets Nervous. If Manny the Hat Kaufmann ever broke a sweat, nobody had filed a report about it. He ran his operation like a poker game at a funeral. Quiet, precise, and with just enough mess to keep everyone from cracking jokes. So when Mick saw him press thumb to forefinger like he was crushing invisible dice, he knew something was wrong. "I don't like ghosts with silver watches," Manny said, voice lower than usual. "Could be nothing," Mack offered. "Shnooky once thought a fiscus plant was an undercover cop." "Yeah," Shnooky said, brightening. "Turned out it wasn't, but I was right to be suspicious." Mick, still in his trench coat, leaned against the green baize wall and kept his tone neutral. "We're not here to run your errands, Manny. We're detectives, not debt collectors." Manny gave a thin smile. "Of course, Detective McCathie. Just thought you'd be interested. Someone's using my name to stir up dust, and a crooked race is bad for everyone, including the city's take." "I don't suppose you're here out of civic duty," Mack said. "Civic, no," Manny replied. "Self-preserving? Very." He leaned closer. "There's something off. The raid last week. Sloppier than usual. Suddenly everyone's asking if I'm the one fixing races. I don't fix races, boys. I price them." Just then the phone on the back wall rang. Manny picked up the receiver one-handed, never taking his eyes off the detectives. "What?" Pause. "Who?" Another pause. "I see." He hung up. "That man," he said, brushing lint off his sleeve, "was a man named Rocco. Tends bar over at Benny Marino's shop." "Chalks?" Mick asked. "He's one spreading your name in the dirt." "Was," Manny corrected. "Rocco found him half an hour ago. Back door ajar, Benny's body slumped over the tally ledger." Mack crossed his arms. "Dead? As prohibition." "How?" "Strangled. Jockey silks. And get this. Someone shoved a betting slip in his mouth. Long shot from race 4. The one they say I fixed." Shnooky gasped and rasped his knuckles 3 times in the wooden booth wall. Mick narrowed his eyes. "It's not just a murder, Manny, that's a message. The kind that makes headlines." Manny reached into his coat and slid a sealed envelope across the table. "What's this?" Mick asked. "Something I hope never sees daylight. Names, connections, addresses no one writes down. If I get hauled in for something I didn't do, if I disappear, you'll know where to look." Mack hesitated. "You realize if you're involved, we're duty-bound to act." Manny gave a slight nod. "Which is why I'm giving this to the 2 cops I actually trust to care more about the truth than the front page splash." Mick didn't touch the envelope right away. "We're not your fixers, Manny. Don't make the mistake of thinking we're on your side." "I don't need sides," Manny said coolly. "Just time. And if someone's framing me, I'd rather you find them before I do." That's when Shnooky piped up. "Oh, I remembered something else." All heads turned. "I saw the silver pocket watch guy before," Shnooky said, eyes wide. "I know where. It was outside Benny's shop. Last week. Talking to someone with a clipboard and a badge." Mick and Mack exchanged a glance. "You sure it was a badge?" Mack asked. "I know what a badge looks like. Seen enough of them before being cuffed." Mick muttered under his breath, If this runs through the department." "Might not stop at the department," Manny said, puffing a cigar. "Could go through City Hall and out the other side." Chapter 3. A Corpse and a Ticket. The betting shop Benny Chalks Marino called home was wedged between a bakery and a tailor's storefront near College Street. A narrow door buzzed entry, and a painted-over transom window that hadn't seen daylight since 1942. By the time Mick and Mack arrived, the door was taped. The coroner had come and gone, and the constable stood out front with a clipboard and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. "Detectives," the young officer said, straightening as they approached. "Inspector said to let you take a look. Not much left to see." Mick showed his badge, nodded, and stepped inside. The air was close. Still holding on to the smell of cigar smoke, stale whiskey, and something newer. Sour. Death had a smell, all right. Like old copper and sour milk. This room had it in spades. "Chalks always ran his books from this table," Mack said, nudging a chair with his foot. "Didn't trust back offices. Said they made you look guilty." "Didn't help him this time," Mick muttered. The body was gone, but the scene was loud with its absence. The floor was scuffed with heel marks. A toppled lamp lay cracked in the corner, and on the small desk, still open, was a red leather ledger and a torn betting slip. Mick picked up the slip with gloved fingers. "Fourth race. Button hook. $100 to win. Never cash." Mack raised an eyebrow. "Think Benny placed that bet?" "No," Mick said. "I think whoever killed him wanted us to think he did. Framing a guy for a race fixing after he's dead." Mack shook his head. "That's extra. Someone wants a stink of this fix to stick to Manny. Benny was just the match to light it." They turned as a soft voice came from the stairwell behind them. "Well, well, if it isn't Toronto's finest." She stepped into the room like she owned it. Heels clicking, cigarette in hand, confidence poured into a tight belted coat. Dolores Dolly Pirelli. Chalks Girl Friday. Bookkeeper, watchdog, maybe more. "Dolly," Mack said, smiling. "Didn't expect you here so soon." "I came to collect the book," she said, flicking ash into a saucer. "Before the city puts a lock on them and forgets where they buried the key." Mick gestured toward the open ledger. "This one?" Dolly gave it a glance and shrugged. "That's just the front, window dressing. The real records weren't kept in ink." "You always this calm around murder scenes?" Mick asked. "I worked numbers in Buffalo during a mob war," she said. "That is practically polite." Mack tilted his head. "What was your relationship to Benny?" She gave a sly smile. "Complicated. But I didn't kill him, if that's what you're asking." Mick stepped closer. "Who do you think did?" Dolly's smile faded. "I think someone wanted to burn more than just Benny. I think they wanted to scorch the whole table and rebuild from the ashes. You boys ever seen a forest fire?" Mick blanked. "A couple. It doesn't stop when you yell at it," she said. "It doesn't care who started it." Mick studied her. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" "Sure," she said, pulling her coat tighter. "But if I vanish, I expect you two to avenge me in style." She turned on her heel and left before either of them could stop her. Mack sighed. "You ever get the feeling everyone in this business has better lines than we do?" Mick looked down at the betting slip again. "I'm more worried about who's still holding a ticket." Chapter 4. Smoke and Soak. By the next morning, the newspapers had already started to circle. Bookmaker found dead in fixing scandal read the front page of the Toronto Star. The telegram went with something snappier. Chalks cashes out. No mention of Manny the Hat Kaufmann. Yet. But Mick knew how these things worked. Gossip was the grease of the city. By the time ink dried, reputations could be soaked through. The detectives stood at the stables behind Greenwood Park. The air thick with manure, steam, and cigarette smoke. Horses snorted in their stalls. Grooms moved with the quiet efficiency of people who spoke more to animals than people. Somewhere nearby, a radio murmured jazz through static. Jockey on Buttonhook was a kid named Richie Razor Limb, Mack said, flipping through his notes. 17. Too young to bet, old enough to break a millionaire's heart. They found Razor polishing his boots with more care than his conscience. He looked up when they approached, skinny, nervous, and wearing a grin like he practiced it in the mirror. Detectives, he said, heard you might be stopping by. Mick nodded. Just a few questions about the fourth race. Sure, Razor said, standing up. You saw it, right? I ran clean. That horse just had more in the tank. Mick folded his arms. Didn't report any injury concerns in the favorite before the race. Both ran like they were sleepwalking. It's not on me, Razor said quickly. You want to talk to the trainers? We will, Mack said. But first, how much did you make off that win? Razor blinked. Me? I don't bet. Against the rules. Mick held up the race form. Someone placed a big bet in Buttonhook through a beard. Someone who knew was going to win. That doesn't happen by accident. Razor's fingers twitched. Look, all I know is the horse was fit. Ran like a dream, that's all. Mick narrowed his eyes. Did Benny Marino speak to you before the race? No, Razor said too quickly. I mean, he was around, sure, but we didn't talk. Uh-huh, Mack said. You know who else was around? Someone with a silver pocket watch. You ever seen one? Razor's gaze darted left. There it is, Mack muttered, that little flinch. The jockey sighed. There was a guy. Never gave a name. Just said he represented some concerned parties. Wanted me to scratch Buttonhook last minute. Said the odds would go nuts. Told him I wasn't playing that game. So instead you ran the race straight, Mick asked? I did, Razor said. Scout's honor. You don't look like a Boy Scout, Mack said. I washed out after 2 merit badges. Razor shrugged. But the horse was clean. Whatever happened with the odds, it wasn't me. Mick considered him. Either the kid was dumb and honest, or clever and slippery. Either way, someone had tried to manipulate the race, and he hadn't gone for it. Which meant someone else had pulled a different lever. That night, the detectives returned to Manny's joint. The second-floor room was quiet, save for the occasional ring of a rotary phone and the squeak of chalk against the odds board. Manny met them in the back behind the smoked glass and velvet ropes. Well, he asked. The jockey's story checks out, Mick said. He got an offer, turned it down. The horse ran straight. Manny nodded. And yet Benny's dead, and I'm the one everyone's whispering about. That's because whoever rigged this thing knew how to stir the pot, Mack said. They placed just enough doubt. Gave the cops a body, and they left you holding the match. Manny poured himself a scotch. They want to ruin me. Mick leaned in. Then give us something. Anyone Benny was dealing with, someone new in the scene, flashy, reckless, maybe using a beard of their own. Manny thought for a moment, then reached into his desk and pulled out a business card. The name read, Frankie Palumbo. Goes by 2 ticks, Manny said. He used to be reliable. Lately he's been placing bets too large for his bankroll. Always looking at his watch like he's running out of time. Mick took the card. Let's see what Frankie's been up to. Chapter 5. Dolly in the firelight. Dolly Pirelli lived in a small flat above an Italian bakery near Trinity Bellwoods. 2 rooms, a balcony, and a fireplace that hadn't worked since the war. The scent of flour and anise wafted up through the floorboards, battling cigarette smoke and the faint perfume of burnt coffee. Mick knocked. Mack leaned against the hallway wall, arms crossed, watching the shadows in the stairwell. The door cracked open. Dolly peeked out. "Oh, it's you," she said, voice low. "I was hoping it was a pizza I didn't order." "You always this jumpy?" Mick asked. "I'm always this careful," she said, stepping aside to let them in. The flat was dim and tidy. The record spun quietly in the corner, something slow and smoky, saxophone trailing like a question with no answer. On the coffee table sat a metal wastebasket, half filled with burned paper scraps. Mack raised an eyebrow. "Doing a little light reading?" Dolly ignored the question and walked to the window, cracking to let in the cool night air. Her silhouette was sharp against the city lights beyond. "What do you want, detective?" she asked, "other than to rummage through my garbage?" Mick stepped closer. "You were burning ledgers." "Wrong," she said. "I was burning lists. Names, yes, but not Benny's books. His real records were in his head. The stuff I torched was just backup, old debts, bad bets, people who'd already disappeared or died owing money. Ghost paper." "Still evidence," Mick said. "Of what?" she asked, turning. "That he cleaned house after someone strangled my boss? Or they didn't want cops or cooks flipping through old names looking for blood?" "You're not under arrest," Mack said. "We just want the truth." Dolly took a drag from her cigarette. "Everyone wants the truth, until it's inconvenient." Mick didn't blink. "What do you know about a man named Frankie Two Ticks Palumbo?" Her eyes narrowed. "Frankie? He's small time. Not even good at being bad. He used to run errands for Benny, but Benny cut him loose months ago." "Why?" "He got greedy. Started placing bets for someone else. Told Benny he had a new backer. Never said who. But whoever it was, they had money, real money, and no patience." "Did Benny ever talk about him after that?" "Not much," he said. "But he once told me Frankie would end up in a ditch or on the front page." Mack whistled. "Looks like Benny made the front page first." Dolly's voice dropped. "Frankie came by last week, late. Say he needed to square a debt. Offered Benny a roll of cash. Too much, too fast. Benny didn't bite. Told Frankie to get lost." "And did he?" "He left," she said. "But he was twitchy. Kept looking at his watch like it was about to explode." Mick and Mack exchanged a look. "Where can we find him?" Mick asked. Dolly hesitated. Then, "He's been hanging around a place near the docks, an old pool hall on Cherry Street. Calls it his office." Mick nodded. "You've been helpful?" Dolly arched an eyebrow. "You gonna protect me?" "We'll do our best." She laughed softly. There was no humor in it. "That's what Benny said once, right before someone shoved a losing ticket in his throat." Mick stepped to the door. Mack lingered. "If you think of anything else, I'll write it in smoke," she said, and closed the door behind them. Chapter 6. The Beard with Two Faces. The pool hall on Cherry Street looked like it hadn't seen an honest break since before the Depression. The front windows were fogged from the inside. The neon sign blinked open, like it was trying to convince itself, and the cracked and linoleum floor, the dull sheen of spilled whiskey and lost bets. Mick and Mack stepped in, shoes echoing off the quiet clack of billiard balls. 3 men glanced up. One muttered something under his breath and walked out. The 2 others went back to pretending they weren't listening. Behind a back table under a single swinging light stood Frankie Two Ticks Palumbo. He was lean, pinched, and overdressed for the weather. Double-breasted suit, wide tie, and a gleaming silver pocket watch he couldn't seem to stop checking. Mick took one look and whispered to Mack, "Like a weasel with a wristwatch." "Classy weasel," Mack said. "That's new." Frank looked up as they approached. Well, if it isn't Toronto's answer to Holmes and Watson." It's that we both carry guns, Mack replied. Frankie smiled with too many teeth. What brings you boys down to the docks? Looking for a hustle? We're looking for a fix, Mick said. 4th race at Greenwood. Button hook. Heard you're awful interested in the outcome. Frankie's smile twitched. Like a long shot. You placed a bet through a beard, Mick continued. Didn't want it traced. But it didn't work. We traced it anyway. Can't prove it was me, Frankie said. You're not on trial, Mack replied. Yet. Frankie looked around the room. You two here officially? We're detectives, Mick said. We're always here officially. Frankie clicked his pocket watch open and shut like it owed him something. You got no evidence. I didn't fix anything. I just heard some horses weren't going to run their best. Mick stepped in. Who told you that? Frankie's mouth opened and closed. The click of his watch filled the silence. Someone paid you to place the bet, Mick said. Then Benny turned up dead. Someone wanted Manny framed, and you were the delivery boy. Frankie's hand hovered near his jacket. Mack's hand hovered near his holster. Easy, Mack said. Nobody's getting shot in a pool hall this early in the week. Frankie hesitated, then slowly pulled out a crumpled cigarette instead. Look, I didn't kill Benny. I was mad, yeah, he stiffed me. Said I was out of the game. I just wanted to even the score. With a silk scarf and a losing ticket, Mick asked. Frankie's face twitched. You didn't just want to get even, Mick said. You wanted someone else to take the fall. You wanted Manny to get knocked out of the business. Frankie exhaled through his teeth. Think I'm the only one tired of living under that fat hat shadow? He's been holding court for years. But he doesn't run the town anymore. Things are changing. That's right, Mack said. And where were you planning to be when the dust settled? Frankie didn't answer. We've got motive, means, and now thanks to you, a confession wrapped in bravado, Mick said, pulling out his cuffs. You're coming with us. Frankie raised his hands. You can't prove. Mick spun him around and snapped the cuffs on. Frankie Palumbo, you're under arrest for the murder of Benny Marino. You have the right to remain silent. We suggest you finally use it. Outside, with Frankie in the backseat of the cruiser and the harbor wind cutting through their coats, Mack lit a cigarette and looked toward the skyline. So that's it, he asked. He really thought he could play the angles. Kill a rival and frame the hat without someone noticing? Mick nodded slowly. You would have gotten away with it if he hadn't tried to act like the smartest guy in the room. Mack took a drag. What now? Now, Mick said, we tell Manny he's off the hook, and let's hope he's grateful enough not to call in a favor for a while. Chapter 7. Tick-tock, Shnooky talks. The squad room of Division Street was quieter than usual. The clock ticked. Typewriter sat idle. Somewhere down the hall, a coffee percolator groaned like it was about to give up on life. Frankie Two-Tex Palumbo sat in the holding cell with his head down, pocket watch confiscated, fingers twitching like they missed it. Mick stood behind a two-way glass, arms folded. Mack leaned against the door frame, flipping through a notebook. Well, Mack said, he's not talking anymore. He doesn't have to, Mick replied. He's already gave us what we needed. Think it was just greed, Mack asked. Mick shook his head. It was pride. Frankie wanted to be more than a runner. Thought killing Benny would make him a player. Pinning it on Manny? That was just strategy. Mack sighed. The guy's not even smart enough to be crooked properly. Just then there was a loud throat clearing from the hallway. Shnooky Levine shuffled into view. Hat in hand, trench coat 2 sizes too big, looking like someone had asked him to recite the alphabet backward while walking a tightrope. Shnooky, Mack said. What are you doing here? Shnooky blinked. Heard he caught the guy. Thought he'd come down and, I don't know, congratulate you. Maybe see if it's safe to come out from under the fire escape. Mack gave a thin smile. Got more to say, don't you? Shnooky looked down his shoes. Maybe. Depends. You ever feel like your brain's trying to send you a telegram but keeps running out of change? Daily, Mack said. What do you remember? Shnooky fidgeted with his hat. It wasn't just Frankie. I mean, yeah, he's the one who tied the knot, so to speak. Someone else put him up to it. Saw me with a guy a few nights before Benny bought the barn. Where? Mick asked. Outside a diner in Spadina. Late, real quiet. The guy had a briefcase, real fancy coat. Didn't fit the neighborhood. Did you see his face? No, but I saw his car. Mick's eyes narrowed. Go on. Big black Nash. Custom grill, real sleek. I remember because he parked it like a jackass, took up 2 spots, and knocked over a fire hydrant cone. Mack blinked. That sounds like a politician's car. Or a lawyer, Mick said. Or both, Mack added. Mick turned to Shnooky. Just gave us a whole new problem. I did? Shnooky looked nervous. Thought I was being helpful. You were, Mick said. Too helpful. Mack sighed. Which means someone bigger than Frankie might have pulled the first thread. Now we're watching the rest of the sweater unravel. Shnooky's eyes wide. No, am I the sweater? Back upstairs. Mick and Mack sat across from Inspector Stewart, who frowned behind his desk. A city councilman's aide owns a car that matches the one your informant described, the inspector said. Name's Harold Penn. Works quiet, keeps his hands clean. Too clean. You think he paid Frankie? Mack asked. Can't prove it, Stewart said. And I'm not about to start arresting City Hall on hearsay from a man named Shnooky. But it means this goes deeper, Mick said. Stewart nodded. File your report, lock up Palumbo. If I were you two, I'd keep Manny close, and your coats closer. Chapter 8. The Cop Cracks. The officer's name was Sergeant Leo Greeley. Uniform, square-jawed, and just crooked enough to leave fingerprints on the soap bubble. He'd been stationed in Manny's district for over a decade. Long enough to know the angles, the players, and the price of silence. Mick and Mack found him having coffee alone, a greasy spoon near Queen and Sherburne. Stirring in too much sugar, not enough guilt. Mind if we sit? Mick asked, not really asking. Greeley grunted. Detectives, don't you boys have bigger fish to fry? We're working our way up the food chain, Mack said cheerfully. Right now, that means you. Greeley's stirring slowed. I've got nothing to say. That's funny, Mick said, sliding into the booth. Because you've been saying plenty to the wrong people. Greeley glanced around. Careful with accusations, McCathie. You don't sit well with brass. We don't need brass, Mack said, sitting opposite him. We've got witnesses. You've been taking kickbacks from Benny Marino for years. But lately, you've been playing both sides. Mick leaned forward. Frankie Palumbo placed his race-fixing bet through one of your old contacts. A wire guy you vouched for. He confessed. Someone backed him. Pushed him to make a move. Someone in uniform who could fake an injury report, steer a fix. Keep the right people blind. You saying that's me? Wearing the right badge and the wrong aftershave, Mack said. You know you doctored the vet report before race 4? Said the favorite had a tendon strain. Funny thing, track doc says he never signed off. Greeley's mouth tightened. What do you want? The name of who paid you, Mick said. Because this isn't just about a dead bookie anymore, it's about corruption, City Hall, and you're the linchpin. Greeley looked at them both. Then a voice just above a whisper, he said, Harold Penn, councilman's aide, works in mayor's ear like a ventriloquist. He's been trying to consolidate the off-track action, get the betting under one roof. One roof, Mack repeated, like a new bookmaking front? Exactly, Greeley said. Something polished, private, elusive. He wants to shut down guys like Manny. Make way for respectable crime. Clean suits, clean ledgers. Mick frowned. And Benny? Wasn't supposed to die, Greeley muttered. Just scare Manny. Stir the pot. Frankie went too far. Idiot, always thought he was the next big thing. And you, Mack asked. I was just supposed to keep the pressure up. Raid here, citation there. Nudge the game. Mick stood, going to write it all down. Every meeting, every deal. Going to protect me? Greeley asked, voice thin. No, Mick said flatly. But if you're lucky, maybe the system you sold out won't throw you in the same cell as the guy you helped hire. Later that evening, back at Division Street, the air felt heavier. Mack tossed a signed confession down their desk. So Penn paid Greeley. Greeley leaned on Frankie. Frankie killed Benny. Someone upstairs let the whole thing slide. Not anymore, Mick said. We hand this over, Internal Affairs lights a match, and suddenly half the city's nervous. What about Manny? We clear his name quietly, Mick said, and we tell him to keep his head down until the dust settles. Mack stretched. Think Penn goes down with the rest? Mick looked out the window. That depends on whether he runs or doubles down. Chapter 9. Truth in the Paddock. It was raining by the time Mick and Mack returned to Greenwood Park. Not the cinematic kind either, just a cold, steady drizzle that soaked through coats, dulled the noise of the crowd, and made the whole racetrack feel like it had somewhere better to be. A pair of horses cantered lazily past on the far side of the track, indifferent to the scandal unraveling around them. Why are we back here again? Mack asked, tightening his collar. Because Frankie may have pulled the trigger, Mick said, but someone handed him the gun. I want to hear it from the source. The source, as it happened, was standing beneath the overhang behind the paddock. Harold Penn. City Hall aide and would-be gambling mogul, dressed in a camel hair coat with a lapel pin that probably cost more than Mack's suit. He looked like a man who memorized every line he planned to say, and one who never expected to need a plan B. Detectives, Penn said smoothly, lighting a cigarette beneath the awning. Bit of a damp day for turf inspections, isn't it? Mick didn't smile. Funny. I think it was a perfect day for burying the truth. Penn exhaled slowly. Let me guess. Frankie Palumbo sang. Greeley cracked. You've come to make me the fall guy. You paid for a fix, Mick said. Used Greeley to nudge the paperwork. Whispered in Benny's ear through Frankie. When it got out of hand, you stayed quiet. I paid for a push, Penn said calmly. A nudge, not a murder. If I paid for a killing, it wouldn't have looked like that mess. Mack stepped closer. You think that makes you clean? No, Penn said, brushing ash off of his sleeve. It's smart. You know how this city works, gentlemen. Power doesn't get gassed. It gets maneuvered. I was consolidating a scattered illegal industry into something palatable. Private clubs, quiet halls, clean faces. Think Kaufmann's type can survive in the new Toronto? Mick didn't blink. You underestimate the old Toronto. Penn's smile thinned. What's your move then? You arrest me? On what charge? Inciting corruption? Misusing influence? Good luck. Greeley's word won't stick in a courtroom full of my friends. Mack looked at Mick. Mick looked at the track. Then he pulled from his coat a small reel-to-reel recorder, clicked it off, held it up. You talk too much, Mr. Penn. Penn's eyes went flat. Greeley wore a wire, Mick said. Got the meeting details, the money handoff, the plan to smear Manny, the works. Penn dropped his cigarette. Mack grinned. You're going to look great in stripes. Back at Division Street, the tape was locked up and Penn was in custody. The mayor's office was already sending lawyers and press statements. It would be a mess, sure, but the truth was finally on the board. Mick loosened his tie. So much for tidy endings. Yeah, Mack said, but at least nobody else had to die. Just then a knock at their door. It opened, and Dolly Pirelli walked in, dry despite the rain, trench coat cinched tight, eyes like a woman who'd read the last page of the book before anyone else. "You boys done playing jockey?" she asked. Mick stood. "We got a city in cuffs, crooked cop in holding, and a fixer in a cell." Dolly smiled. "So the hat lives to bet another day." "For now," Mick said. She walked to the door, paused. "You ever need someone who can keep books in secret?" she said over her shoulder. "Call me." Then she was gone. Chapter 10. Cash, Kisses, and Confessions. 2 days later, the front page of the Telegram read, "City Aide arrested in race-fixing scandal. The big fix exposed." Harold Penn's face was plastered below the headline, looking appropriately sheepish in his camel hair coat. Below that, a blurry photo of Manny Kaufmann waving away reporters, with a cigar in the caption, "I just said odds, boys, not firestorms." In the Detective Bureau of Division Street, Inspector Stewart dropped the paper on Mick and Mack's desk with a thump. "Do you want a medal or stiff drink?" he asked. "Neither," replied Mick, sipping coffee, "just a week without racing metaphors." Mack flipped the page. Frankie's singing like a baritone in lockup. Greeley's flipped, and Penn's lawyer is already arguing he was advancing policy reform through economic realignment. Stewart grunted. "Tell that to Benny Marino's ghost." There was a knock at the door. A uniformed officer handed Mack a small envelope. Inside, 2 betting slips. Race 6, Greenwood, $10 to win. A note was clipped to them in looping, elegant script. "For services rendered. Don't spend it all in one place. Dolly." Mick smirked. "You think these will cash?" "Only one way to find out," Mack said, tucking them into his coat. Epilogue. One more race. Greenwood Park a week later. The stands were quieter now. Scandal had a way of clearing crowds like a cold wind. But the track still ran and the ponies still thundered like nothing had happened. Mick and Mack leaned on the rail, coffees in hand, watching the horses file into the gate. "You ever think about quitting?" Mack asked. "The job, the city, all of it?" Mick took a sip. "Sometimes. But then I remember if we left, who'd explain to Shnooky how doorknobs work?" Mack laughed. "Fair point." They stood in companionable silence as the race began. The thunder of hooves rose quick and peaked. As the pack rounded the final turn, Mick said, "You know what the real fix is?" "What?" "Thinking there's such a thing as a clean slate." Mack grinned. "You're getting poetic." Mick shrugged. "Must be the air. Maybe it's just nice seeing Manny smile for once." Mack watched the finish line loom. "You think he'll go straight?" "No," Mick said as the horses crossed the wire. "But he'll go smart." The loudspeaker crackled. "Unofficial results. Winner, number 6. Mack blinked. "Wait a second, wasn't that—" Mick pulled the betting slip from his pocket. "Dolly's pick." Mack laughed. "Well, I'll be." Mick folded the slip and tucked it away. "One for the books." They turned toward the exit. Boots crunching gravel, dust on their coats, the scent of turf and trouble still clinging to the air. As they walked off, Mack asked, "So what's next?" Mick smiled. "Whatever it is, it won't be boring." The end. Stay tuned next week for the next Mick and Mack mystery. This has been Jay Nickel of Nickel Investigations and Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. Thank you for listening.